We've been talking about what we think. Much more important, what do your undecided voters think?
They were shocked in the first 30 minutes. And Donald Trump was very different than anything that they were expecting. He was calm, he was measured, he wasn't insulting, and they were impressed. But as the debate went on, clearly Trump got agitated, he got frustrated, and he started to revert back to the Trump that they were expecting. In Joe Biden's case, they wanted more details, they wanted more answers, and they felt that Joe Biden was very good at prosecuting Donald Trump, but not good enough at explaining exactly what he's going to do. So the net of all this is essentially a tie, which is very different than the first debate. The net of all this is that there will not be a significant change in the ballots. There will not be a real change in the polling data, that it freezes the race. And that's very good news for Joe Biden.
Yeah, if we believe the polls, obviously, Frank, that have been out so far, that's not good news for President Trump. I'm very curious about one thing. We had an awful lot of allegations, I thought at least, from President Trump against Vice President Biden, as well as his son and his family. And you made $3.5 million here, and you made this money there. As I said, I'm not sure I am aware of the factual support for that. How did the voters react to that? I mean, were they taken with that? Did they start to think maybe Joe Biden is the corrupt politician that President Trump accused him of being?
They simply wanted answers. They wanted the vice president to explain the relationship, what had happened. And basically and they know that they're not going to get it after tonight. And so it was interesting to watch the exchange. We're running a chat room as they're watching the debate. So for the first time ever, I get a chance to find out exactly how they're reacting moment by moment to each of these. And the feeling was that after trying for maybe 5 minutes for Trump to score points, they wanted the moderator, who they were very positive towards, but they wanted her to move on to something that was substantial. And I'll make one other point. The economic debate, they felt Trump won. The racial component of the debate, they thought that Joe Biden won. Climate, they thought that Joe Biden won. They thought they really did. There was as though there were two separate debates, the first half and the second half. But what they really want and what they didn't feel they got is their day-to-day lives. Which of these two candidates is going to have the greatest impact in that first 100 days on their day-to-day lives? And they were agitated that final question, which they loved. What are you going to say to the American people? They felt they didn't get an answer.
For our radio audiences, just before Jeanne jumps in here, what we've just seen is the presidential motorcade leaving Belmont University down in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, Frank, did the undecided voters feel that argument the president was making against Joe Biden, look at you've been in Washington almost 50 years and 8 years as vice president, you haven't done anything, you didn't do all these things you promised. Was that effective for him as far as the undecided voters were concerned?
It's a great question. It's effective the first time. It's less effective the second time. It's not effective the third time. The chat room is saying, move on. Say something that I haven't heard before. Give me something that's relevant. And that's probably the key takeaway for both candidates, because Joe Biden clearly had the best sound bites of either candidate. He was very well prepped this evening. But they still couldn't hear from either candidate, how are you going to specifically improve their lives? That's what they're looking for. It's about them. It's about them, the voters, not about the candidates.
Hey, Frank, this is Rick Davis. Good to see you. I wanted to ask you about the voter groups that we think are in play. You know, suburban women who voted for Trump in 16, abandoned them in 18. He obviously has got to get them back to win states like Arizona and Florida. Older voters who are now peeling off of Trump, we think, by and large, because of his response to COVID. Did you hear things tonight on COVID with older voters and maybe with suburban women on issues of education and the approach with COVID, healthcare, and taxes that maybe Trump would have tried to win them back with?
Yes, they're looking for a balanced approach. They want the presidential candidates to focus on the economy, but health and safety outranks the economy. And I realize that may not be the case with some Bloomberg viewers or listeners, but they want a balance. They want to know that we can fight COVID, that we can do it quickly and effectively, not jeopardize anyone's health and safety, and not screw up the economy. Joe Biden had a couple of really good sound bites on this, but they felt after the segment was over that Donald Trump was still better able to add jobs and improve the economy faster, because that was his priority.
Well, it's interesting, Frank. As you say, it clearly was President Trump's priority. He kept really pushing that point. At the same time, I'm not sure I heard really from either Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden exactly how they can reopen the economy, reopen schools safely. But they both said they wanted to do that. I guess former Vice President Biden at one point said, well, we need to give them resources. We need to give them plastic and plexiglass and things like that. But did the voters think that either candidate really had a specific plan to let us open back up, which we all want to do, but do it safely?
No, and I tend to discount this because the undecideds always ask for information that candidates never give. And the truth is, if you give too many details, then voters' eyes glaze over and they stop being interested. That said, if we look at the transcripts of these debates, neither candidate really focused on the details. They did not go, we're going to do the following three things in order. They didn't do that. And I think they would have been much wiser if they had left out some of the jabs and some of the barbs, and instead said, here's my 3-point plan, here's my 5-point plan, and just simply looked straight in the camera, not at each other, not at the moderator, but in the camera and says, I hear you, I know what you're looking for, and this is what I'm going to do. Neither candidate really did that tonight.
Yeah, Frank, I'm going to throw to you a question I always get and can never respond to well about undecided voters. People always ask, how is it that people are undecided now when Joe Biden and Donald Trump are so well known? So when you talk to these folks, what is it that they're waiting to hear that they think will sway them? Is it that specificity that you're talking about that they'd like to hear on policy, or is it more of a character issue? What do you think they're waiting to hear?
And in this case, I'm so glad you asked that because I would have, frankly, not brought it up. It's a different attribute based on which candidate. In Joe Biden's case, they want to know that he is a centrist and not under the control of Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or AOC. In Donald Trump's case, they know and don't like him and his persona. And so they're trying to decide, can I put up with 4 years of Donald Trump, 4 more years, or would I rather take a risk, a perceived risk, by going with Joe Biden? They're judging these candidates on very different attributes, and that's why they're still undecided. They agree with you that there is no similarity between the two candidates in their demeanor and in their policies. The question is, they would rather have Joe Biden's demeanor and Donald Trump's policies.
Hey, Frank, Rick here. I would want to follow up on that because basically the last question was your closing arguments. And Joe Biden took this time to say, look, it's about character. This election isn't about all these various issues. It was actually, I think, the best moment he had in the debate where he, I think, played defense most of the debate. But at the end, he was able to say, this election is about character. It's about my character. You know me. You know who I am. And you know Donald Trump. And without even attacking him, say, you know his character. So you're telling me that these voters actually already understand that. Why then are they still undecided?
Because they're still nervous about Joe Biden's policies. He was really not clear about fracking. In fact, if you go back to the transcript, I think he contradicted himself. That he says that we're going to be carbon neutral, but that's going to have to involve some sort of fracking. And there are questions that are still not being answered. In Donald Trump's case, he opened so calmly and so concisely that even I, who's been doing this now for 30 years, was surprised at the tone and the demeanor. And I thought, wow, this guy's really been debate prepped. But of course, that changed as the debate went on. And so they have to decide, who am I willing to live with, not just right now, not just on Election Day, but 4 years from now. And the reason why Trump needed a knockout blow tonight, and why I think that in the end, he's going to be the one who lost, is because he didn't get that. He didn't change the race. And if we go and vote based on where things stand right now, Joe Biden's going to be elected president. Trump needed to change that tonight, and I don't think he succeeded.